If you're wanting to get started playing with tracks with your worship band, which also means being able to play with a click, but you don't even know the first place to start, this video is for you. What software do I need? How do I connect this to my soundboard? Does everyone in the band need to be able to hear the click track? Who's the best person to manage all this song to song during the worship set? Those questions we're going to answer and so much more right now. Hi, I'm Dave Dolphin at practicalworshipblog.com, sharing ideas, tips, and practical advice for the worship leader that has to do it all. If you're trying to figure out how to do all the little extra things that comes along with leading a worship ministry, hit that subscribe button and the little notification bell right next to it, and we'll be here to help every single week with new videos. So I'm not going to talk too much about the benefits of running tracks. I figured if you're here, you already know why you want to run tracks with your worship band. You just don't know what the next step is. For me, I like how it fills out the sound with what the band is already doing on stage with keyboard pads and rhythm electric guitar parts and percussion sounds like tambourines and shakers. We even fly in a bass guitar track on the weekends that we don't have a bass player in the band. And I think the band just sounds tighter when they're playing to a click versus when they're not. And speaking of the click, let's talk about that first. In order to play with tracks, your band has to learn how to play with a click track. The click is just a metronome sound that counts out all the beats of each measure of the song as you play. If you've ever taken piano lessons as a kid or played in the marching band in school, you're probably already used to this. Since the tracks are recorded at a specific tempo, they're not going to follow you if your band speeds up or slows down. Your band has to play at the exact tempo as the track. If your band isn't used to playing with a click, this is going to take a little bit of time of getting used to, especially for your drummer. The other members of the band are already used to listening to something else dictate the tempo and then following that, but your drummer is used to actually setting that tempo. So having to switch gears and to force themselves to listen to something else dictate the tempo and then follow that is going to take a little bit of time to get used to. But I would also argue that the most important member of the band to lock in with that click is your drummer. Maybe before you start implementing tracks, maybe start with just getting the band used to playing with a click track during your rehearsals. And as you get more and more comfortable with it, then start using the click track, just the click track, on a Sunday. There is a lot of metronome apps that you can get for your phone or for your iPad. The one that I like is called Tempo, and I'll put a link to that in the description down below. If your band is already using in-ear monitors, I would say that everyone in the band needs to be able to hear the click. If the click is what's driving the tempo of the song, then it makes sense that everyone in the band needs at least some of the click in their ears. And here's the thing, it's going to be really jarring at first when you start doing this, especially if you also turn on the guide track that says things like verse and chorus all throughout the song. But the brain is pretty amazing at how it processes information, and I think you'll be surprised that it doesn't take very long for your brain to get comfortable with what is really an obnoxious sounding sound. So just keep encouraging your band to trust the process, that it's going to be awkward at first, but it doesn't take long to get comfortable with it. This is almost a topic for an entirely different video, so I don't want to get too in the weeds on this topic, but let me try and point you in the right direction. If you just want the metronome sound without the tracks, then just find an old drum machine or maybe get that app Tempo for your iPad. Ableton Live is the industry standard when it comes to running tracks. That's what we use here at the church, and we just run it on a MacBook Pro. I know other churches, like Life Church, they use Pro Tools. If you're familiar with a DAW like GarageBand or Logic or Reaper, then learning Ableton Live isn't all that hard, and there's a ton of videos here on YouTube that you can use to get started. But maybe that's not a learning curve that you have time to figure out, or maybe you don't have an extra MacBook Pro laying around that you can spare to run Ableton Live. There are two main websites where you can go and purchase and download tracks. In fact, that's a really good question. Hang on. There are two websites you can go to and purchase and download tracks. One of those is called multitracks.com. The other one is called Loop Community, and I'll put links to both of those in the description down below. When you download tracks, what you're actually getting is a bunch of audio files. One file might be just the mix of the drums. Another file is the bass guitar part, and then each electric guitar part has its own file as well. So this allows you to mute the tracks that you don't need, that's already, the things that are already represented on the stage, and then the rest of it gets flown in and mixed with the rest of the band. But back to the question of what software do I need, both of these websites have their own player apps on an iPad. So when you buy the track online, they go straight to your iPad, and then the iPad becomes the playback device. If you get your tracks from multitracks.com, then look for the playback app. If you get your tracks from Loop Community, then look for the Prime app. Both of these have tons of training videos that are going to get you up and running pretty quickly, and they've worked really hard at making these apps very easy to use and very intuitive. This can get as simple or as complicated as you would like. For us, we use something called Dante that runs audio digitally over network cables from our laptop running Ableton Live to our audio desk. So it's kind of like having a sound card with multiple outputs that allows us to separate all those tracks coming into the audio desk, and they can mix it independently like they can any other channel that's on the audio desk. But if you want to keep things simple, you just need two outputs. One of those is going to be for the tracks themselves, and that plugs into your audio desk just like any other instrument. And the other output goes to your audio desk as well, but it's just the audio of the click track. So you do want to plug it into the mixer, but you don't want to turn the fader up because you don't want to hear the click track in the PA. You just need a way of being able to send that audio source down to your band in their in-ear monitor mixes. If you're using an iPad, it's as simple as getting a Y cable like this. This end plugs into the headphone jack of the iPad, and then these two are the outputs for the tracks and for the click. So this really depends on your situation. I know of a lot of bands where the drummer is in charge of starting and stopping all the tracks. At my previous church, we were always bringing in different drummers, and so it didn't make sense to keep training all these new people on how to run the tracks, how to start and stop them. So we put the tracks rig by the keyboard player where we had a lot of consistency in that position. And it was easy to hide the technology with the rest of their keyboard rig, and they typically always had at least one hand free to be able to start and stop the track. But currently at this church, we actually run our tracks, run Ableton Live from our front of house position. When I got here, they were already used to running the pads from front of house, so that transition from pads to Ableton Live was a pretty easy one. For us, front of house is the best option, but there is a lot of value in maybe having someone on the stage running your tracks, because if something were to happen, they're going to be one of the first people to know, and they can just kill the track before it becomes a train wreck. If you're interested in diving deeper into Ableton Live, the next thing you need to know is that there's 3 different versions at 3 very different price points. You don't want to be limited in the version that you get, but you also don't want to pay for features that you don't need. I actually made a video on that. You can watch it right here. This one's pretty good as well. Tap on one of those videos and I'll see you in the next one.